Welcome to the Cinematters New York Social Justice Film Festival, brought to you on behalf of the Marlene Meyerson JCC Manhattan. I'm Isaac Zablocki, Director of Film Programs at the JCC. It's an honor and a privilege for me to be here. This festival is a partnership between the Zabar Center for Film and the Stern Center for Social Responsibility. And of course, our work throughout the entire year is to create impact in our community. Among the many topics we explore at this festival are crucial topics such as racial injustice, women's rights, immigration, native rights, food insecurity, environment, LGBTQEI, and of course, the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and his vision to promote social action and collective change. Check out all the films and programs at www.cinematters.film. This festival takes a deep look into some of the more crucial themes impacting our society today and has somehow become even more urgent right now. Our hope is through fantastic films to inspire action and lead to true change and create a better democracy. One Night in Miami is a fictional account of one incredible night where icons Muhammad Ali, Malcolm X, Sam Cooke, and Jim Brown all gather, discussing their roles in the civil rights movement and the cultural revolution of the 1960s. And this film, of course, is being released this weekend through Amazon Prime. And I want to give a big thank you to Amazon for making this all possible. I now am privileged to hand things over to the Associate Director of the festival, Karima Parton, who deserves all the credit for this amazing event. Karima, over to you.
Thank you so much. And of course, it takes a team. So I'm so happy to be back for the 2021 Film Festival. Without further ado, I'm so happy to introduce our guests for tonight's Q&A. Kemp Powers is an American film co-director, screenwriter, and playwright. He is best known for his work on the play One Night in Miami, as well as its 2020 film adaptation, which we are screening for you through the festival. He's also known for Star Trek Discovery and Soul, which can now be seen on Disney+. We also are so honored to have Regina King. She makes her feature directorial debut with this film. She is the recipient of several awards, including an Academy Award, a Golden Globe Award, and 4 Primetime Emmy Awards. She was named Time Magazine's one of the most 100 influential people in the world in 2019. And this conversation will be moderated by Hill Harper. He is a humanitarian, award-winning actor, best-selling author, entrepreneur, health and wellness ambassador, educator, and philanthropist. Harper stars in ABC's #1 drama, The Good Doctor, and is also known for his roles in CSI New York, for which he won 3 NAACP Image Awards for Best Lead Actor in a Drama Series. So without further ado, please enjoy this wonderful Q&A.
Thanks so much, Karima. You know, I'm so excited, you guys, to speak with Regina and Kemp about this phenomenal film. I know everybody just saw and got to experience it, and if you're anything like me, you're still kind of digesting the film and coming and processing in a way. And so with that, let me first just congratulate you, Regina and Kemp. It's just so beautiful, just beautifully done, and in so many ways. I want to dig deep into some deeper questions, but let's start with some easy stuff first, like big general stuff first. First, Kemp, what brought you to want to write this story first as a play, and then when you were writing it as a play, were you thinking about it as a feature at some point, or was it just, hey, we're gonna write this play and tell this story? And why did you want to tell this story?
Yeah, I mean, when I wrote it as a play, I thought that its entire life was going to be on the stage. What really inspired me is that it was a real night. I was reading a book. Obviously, I'm a student of history, a voracious reader, a former journalist. I was reading a really great book on the intersection between pro sports and the civil rights movement. And there was one paragraph in it that said, on the night that Cassius Clay beat Sonny Liston on February 25th, 1964, no party was planned because no one expected him to win. So he went back to the Hampton House in the black section of still segregated Miami and spent the night in quiet conversation with his friends, Malcolm X, Sam Cooke, and Jim Brown. And the next morning is when he announced that he was in the Nation of Islam. So at the time that I read that, I was just like, whoa, this is like, I jokingly said it was stumbling upon the Black Avengers, but the reality of it was that if you had asked me at that time that I read that 15 years ago, who the most impactful, iconic figures on me were, I would have probably said those four men. So while a lot of us already know about the relationship between Malcolm and Muhammad Ali, I think it was very interesting, the Sam Cooke of it all, and like, what was he doing there? And as I started doing research on each of these individual men with the intention at the time of writing a book on their friendship, I just uncovered so many incredible nuggets about all four of them that I really didn't know. So when my journalism career was wrapping up and my playwriting career was picking up, it just felt like the perfect thing to stage theatrically. This idea of these four men going into this room on what could have easily been a crucible night in all of their lives and careers, and coming out changed. And us as an audience getting to be a fly on the wall for that conversation.
Well, that's incredible. And Regina, I'm going to go right here because Kemp sort of alluded to it, because I was going to ask you this much later, but I'm going to go right here. First of all, just beautiful, beautiful work. I've had the pleasure as an actor of being directed by you. I think that you are one of our great living directors and great living actors. So you're a hero, I think, to our community and to everybody. So that has to be said out the gate. I've known you for a very long time, and I've always had such deep respect for you and your commitment to showing the best of who we are in front of the camera, behind the camera, shows through not only in this film, but just who you are as a person. But Kemp just said the Black Avengers, and I was going to ask you about One Piece, and I'm going to go right there. Now, you got Malcolm X running out the house with his, showing his abs with a gun, and then you got him standing up. I think you probably even had like a fan, like Beyonce, on stage, blowing his robe out. You made, this is like a superhero, and incredible. Were you thinking about these men as like superheroes as you're making this from like these archetypes, or how were you thinking about telling the story of these men in relation to each other as well as individuals?
Well, I mean, initially, from reading the script, at that point, I did not know Kemp. And I just thought of them, I guess, as heroes the way I look at the Black men in my life, in the way I don't see them portrayed like this on film or in TV. You don't get to see, you'll get one Black man, but to have four men that are strong, their vulnerability is what makes them strong, that they're complex, that are expressing their fears, that are the men that I know and love. And when I say the men that I know and love, sure, Cassius, Sam, Jim, and Malcolm, if not all of them, at least one of them has impacted, whether you're white, Black, or whatever, American lives in some way. But the thing that they have in common is that they're Black men and they're humans. And so often, just Black people, but especially Black men, have to put on a talisman when they're in the company of a lot of white people to make them feel more comfortable, so that they can have a night without extra stress. And you have to be Black to understand it, to know that, And here's was an opportunity to have a very private conversations that have been going on for years, before 1964, and have it publicly, if you will. So it wasn't until I sat down with Kemp for us to get to know each other, and once I got the job, if you will, did I see that, one, that was his intention, but two, that he fondly called them the Black Avengers. And I was like, you know what? That's exactly who they are, And so it was Kemp that attached the Black Avengers idea to what was already there. But it was definitely my intention to show these men how I don't think we get to see them. You know, when we see Malcolm X portrayed, usually we see him as, you know, when he's giving a speech and when he's, you know, fire and brimstone, as Jim says in the film. But we don't get to see him, the quiet moments as a father, laughing, you know, putting little notes in a book for his daughter to find, you know. We don't get to see that. And that was part of who Malcolm was. And
wow. And so as a director, what were your biggest challenges? I would assume one was, when you looked at it, did you say, wow, 90% of my film is going to take place in one room? How do I make sure visually I'm telling this story and keeping it going like that? Was that a challenge that you consciously discussed, and you and Kemp would go back and forth, or you and the cinematographer as well? And as far as a plan, because I'll tell you, the beauty of the cinematography, I thought was spectacular. One thing stuck out to me visually when the scene between Malcolm and Jim Brown at the table, and you know, your opening shot was the point of the table was there big in the frame, and then you saw this wonderful pastiche of colors, the colors on the wall as well as the wood, and then the draperies. It was this beautiful, it was almost like a painting that I thought was spectacular. And so what was your approach directorially for something like that?
well, I love that you said a painting. Jacob Lawrence's work was inspiration for us as filmmakers, as we are planning the look and feel for the movie. I got to tell you, for me, immediately after reading the screenplay, I knew the dialogue was the star. And Kemp asked me, did I want him to send me a copy of the play, having recorded. I had already read the play, and I never told Kemp. I never finished watching the whole thing, but I was able to watch enough to know that, you know, with the right actors, it's going to be great, because this is an actor's piece. This is it's you know, breathing that life and energy into those words. And so from there, I just my conversations with my cinematographer Tammy Riker, I told her, while this is 1964, and normally you would do tonally you would lean more towards a palette that is a little more muted, if you will, because that is more authentic to the time period. And I want young men to want to watch this film. And just having a young man as a son, I know that things that have muted palettes aren't usually what grabs their attention. So I wanted the film to have color, to be saturated. And I also felt like, as Black people, we are just colorful. You know, with all of our history in this country, we still manage to love and laugh and dance, and color represents that to me. So those were two big things for me. And it was also important to me to the vitality of those men to be represented in the frame without the camera being a distraction. So I wanted energy to always remain in the frame. So if you're really paying attention, the camera really never stops moving throughout this entire film. There are never any true static shots. And that's because I felt like we were gonna be in that room for 14 pages on some scenes. And
did you shoot it sequentially?
No.
You did. You jumped around. Okay.
Yeah, I jumped around. I mean, jumped around to the point, and you know this, Hill, sometimes when you're faced with challenges like weather and things like that, things become cover sets. And in New Orleans, where we shot, you know, weather could be really challenging. So I had the actors, I had to tell them, look, you gotta know these our two biggest scenes, 28 pages of work. You gotta know it like a play. And because we don't know what the weather is gonna be, and we had the rooftop scene, and then one of the big scenes inside the room, and we literally jumped back and forth between those scenes over like a 3-day period, just so that we could get them because weather was going to be a challenge. So that's not, you know, normally how you want to shoot, but that's what it was.
Hey, Kemp. So Kemp, you know, Regina just mentioned the actors and casting. Let's talk about that. You know, since you had shepherded the play, what were your thoughts around how important, number one, casting would be, and number two was the thought to take the actors from the play and put them in the film, or and were any of the actors in the play at all ever that are in the film, or is it a whole new group?
No, it's a whole new group. And I mean, one of the things that I love about Regina's approach to it was that she auditioned people. I mean, like, she auditioned lots and lots of people, because one of the things that made the play work was that these were not impersonations. It's very easy for someone to dress like Malcolm X, do a Muhammad Ali accent. You know, these guys have been photographed, they've been recorded. I mean, maybe Sam Cooke, maybe the least, but we all know his music so well. But I think the default for a lot of people is to go into an impersonation. And so much what makes this work is that it's not an impersonation. You have to do a characterization, because each of these men, the point of I wanted to write them in a way that is the private version of them, not the public version. So of course, taking everything that I know about them in private and public, I tried to create a characterization that's a little bit different than the way we see them publicly. And I think that's one of the keys to the casting. And I think that, you know, what Regina did was really, really impeccable. I mean, one of the things that I've told people is that they don't understand that we were under an incredibly tight schedule. We had almost no rehearsal time. The guy who played Malcolm X, we cast 2 weeks before we shot. These guys all met each other on set. And I think the first scene you shot, Regina, was them walking into the room after the fight. So these guys didn't even know each other. And their first scene, having just met and rehearsing it 30 minutes before, was them coming into the room and getting right into the drama. So it took a certain amount of like, I don't know what people, I mean, obviously we know Leslie Odom Jr. was in Hamilton. I know Kingsley Ben-Adir has some stage work, but I mean, you would have assumed all four of these guys had a history in stage work because of their agility in handling what was asked of them. And look, I don't tend to enjoy seeing stuff that I've written. Once it's done, I kind of see it and then I let it go. But I gotta say, like, I'll rewatch this film and I just smile watching these guys perform. I get this smile on my face. And I go to my favorite parts. I go to that scene with Jim and Malcolm at the table, and I watch Aldous lean in, you know, and say like, man, I know what these people think of me. And I'm just like, I get chills. I love seeing them bring that to life in a way that is beyond my dreams.
Well, Kemp, we all do, and we all do. And to be clear, it all starts with the writing. You know, none of us as actors or directors or anybody are there, but for what you create on the page.
Absolutely.
And Regina, you know, Ken was just talking about performance. For those directors that are out there, can you actually maybe speak to your process and how you help actors dial in a performance that is simultaneously extremely powerful, but not, as Kemp was talking about, it doesn't feel like it has to be stoked up and over the top. I mean, because the subtlety and the nuance of the performances here. And I always tell people, I say, you can always tell a film that's been directed amazing, because you'll often see a film where there's one performance that's an outlier and it's amazing, and then the other performances are, they're okay. But when you see a movie like this, where every single performance is is a 10 plus out of 10, a lot of that goes to the director. And directors don't always want to accept that, and they say, oh, it's all casting, but we know the deal. What is your process in doing that? It reminds me of a film, Jerry Maguire, that I loved, where we've seen all those actors be bad, but in that film, every actor was an 11. That's directing, directing. What is your process in helping actors sort of dial it in and keep it in that pocket?
Well, it's interesting that, you mentioned Jerry Maguire, because that was, I think I've been, even before I knew that I wanted to direct, I had been collecting information from directors I've been working with for ever since I've been working. And there are different styles of directing, and my experience with Cameron Crowe definitely was one of the experiences that I had more moments of, when I think back to it, more moments that I witnessed that I could employ as a director, because witnessing things that you would not do is just as important as the things that you would. But I feel like having the understanding that what it takes as an actor, that journey to get to a certain place, I understand that from an experiential place, one. And then two, I understand that all actors aren't built the same. How I communicate with you, Hill, is not the same way I communicate with Freddie. You have an intended goal, but the path to get there is different for each actor. And to be sensitive to what works with conversation or communication with one actor does not work with the other. And quickly, it's kind of psychology, I guess, but quickly assessing that. And I would say, if that was going to be a strong suit for me.
How would someone, just for a practical knowledge of a director who's watching this out of this festival, how would they ascertain that? Like, what is this? What would be one or two go-to things that you could give advice on how someone could pick up on, what you think could be the motivating factor for a given actor versus another?
Actually talk to your actors outside of the work, to have an actual conversation with them. That has nothing to do with the work. Just getting to know, well, where are you from? Getting a little background, having the conversation that you have with somebody when you meet somebody at a bar. That type of conversation. Have that with them. And I'm going to keep going back to Good Doctor, but I had that conversation with every single one of you guys. Now, every single one of you aren't aware that I had that conversation. And luckily for me, I already knew you. We've had conversations before. But even still, we hadn't seen each other for a while. And before we started shooting, we sat down at the bar and at the fireplace and had a conversation. So I do that with all the actors. Sometimes you don't get as much time in that, as long of a conversation as other moments, but I feel like it's really important to make sure you have it.
Let me ask a question about a very nuanced thing, Kemp, that you wrote, and Regina, I'd love your perspective on this, because it has actually to do with some casting as well. We don't often see discussions that we as Black folk know we have when it comes to differences within our community as it relates to skin tone, as it relates to mentality, aggressiveness. And there's the wonderful scene that we keep talking about where there's a discussion about, well, damn, man, you light skinned and you so angry, that kind of thing. And now what's interesting here, and and this is a casting point, is that Sam Cooke was light skinned as well, you know, in real life, right? And in a way,
he's not light skinned.
He was
Maybe the photos look that way.
How brown? Okay. Well, this is what's so wonderful about discussions like this, is that we in our community have discussions about, you know, it's like being an AKA, you got to pass the paper bag test, or I'm a Delta and I'm a this and I'm a that. And all of this stuff is very historical, but it's also inherited.
Sure.
Right? You know, Kemp, talk about the process of writing about with these things that we know we talk about, yet they're difficult because he's like, yo, you think Sam's light? Is he light? No, he was brown. He was, you know, and that could be, it's an interesting thing.
Well, I mean, look, that part of it, and it came from a very just honest and real place. And it was just like, all the light-skinned dudes I was in college with were angry as hell. You know, like they were, you know, the Farrakhan was up there. All the Nation of Islam dudes were light-skinned dudes. And I was like, the guards were dark-skinned guys. And I was thinking like watching Adam Clayton Powell and just watching speakers. And I was like, it's interesting. The dark man's way of being militant might be different than the light-skinned man's way of being militant. And I think that looking at a Malcolm X and a Jim Brown, those are like the extreme versions of that, of when you're darker, you know, you're seen, there's complexion privilege, even within our own community. I'm not the first person to deal with this. Spike Lee, I thought, wonderfully tackled that in School Days, you know, like he made that a central point of the whole film. Good hair, light skin. This is something that just, it plagues us. Look, it's our community. And I just could not resist getting it into a discussion when it comes to Malcolm and Muhammad Ali, because those were actually the two light-skinned guys.
Right. Well, so Muhammad was often criticized because he would call his opponents gorillas, or
like Joe Frazier. Exactly.
Like Joe Frazier, and often they were darker complected, right, than he was. And there was that, hey man, how you gonna be a proud black man but call another black man a gorilla? You're calling the same name that the white dude would call him. And it's so very interesting, right?
Yeah, it's a toxic element of our community. I mean, I used to think about that all the time, the way that he berated Frazier and the way he called himself pretty. And you would ask yourself, well, I look more like Joe Frazier, you know, like growing up, me just being a little, you know, ugly black kid in Brooklyn that no one wanted to talk to. I couldn't get a girl to talk to me with a pork chop around my neck. So, you know,
Spike Lee couldn't either.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. Like you're aware of these things from the time you're very, you know, you got your uncles, you got that one uncle with the light eyes, you know what I mean, who's super light skinned. He's named something like Tex. And you're just like, all the girls like that uncle, and you know what time it is. So
Regina's got those light eyes.
Yeah, I mean,
she knows about that. She knows about that life.
But here's something that's really funny though. And Kemp, you will remember this. For that, while that is not the entire film, it was such an important part of the story to me. And so as we're going through the casting process, you know, the producers have some names on the list for Malcolm. And I'm like, Malcolm has to be light-skinned. I'm sorry. I know that Denzel played Malcolm, but in our story, Malcolm has to be light-skinned. And at one point, Kemp was like, okay, Regina, we could lose that. We could, and I was like, no, Kemp. Because he was like, don't sacrifice the whole casting. I was like, we're gonna find him. We're gonna find him. We're gonna find him, and he's gonna be light-skinned. That part is for us. That is for Black people. When Jim and Malcolm have that little exchange, that is for us. And for me, it also set up the moment when Jim leans into Malcolm and says, you know, the line about white people getting in your head. And I felt like that helped set it up even more. to the point that that's the one time I decided to jump the line. If anyone that was watching noticed, the camera moves and we jump the line when Jim moves in, and because that line to me is, it's really powerful. And I can't stress enough how much I feel like the discussion of colorism within our own community right before that line helps set that line up even more.
Yeah, it's funny too, because even in the stage play, that is an element that was present in the stage play. And it comes after such an intense conversation that everyone's really kind of feeling certain strong emotions. So for Jim to say, you light-skinned dudes are always so militant, the Black people in the crowd just had this massive release of laughter. It's like the last thing you expect to come out of someone's mouth when Malcolm has just read somebody the riot act, and it works so well. And Regina was right. I mean, I was just, because casting is stressful. And it was like, you want to get this movie made. And it was like, if I have to, I didn't want to change the line, by the way, but I was like, if I got to change the line, I'll change it. But she was like, no, where that line has to stay in the film because it's pivotal.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So I have a question, Kemp, about the play side of it. I remember when I was in grad school, there was a play that's called The Meeting by Jeff Stetson, which was a fictional meeting between Malcolm X and Dr. King. And there was only 3 people. And the reason why all the time we did it in grad school is because, it's easy to do these little plays where it's just like a chair, 2 chairs, and that's it. And there was only 3 characters. There was the brother who was from the Fruit of Islam, Malcolm, and Martin. And these types of pieces that talk about these seminal characters, for many of, this is for folks obviously who didn't grow up experiencing them, how much of a burden or mantle did you feel that you were carrying in writing this, when you know that most young people who are going to experience these people will experiencing them through these characters you've created more so than the actual people, right?
I mean, of course, I felt an incredible responsibility to have the characterization be authentic. One thing that I used as a rule was that, yes, it's fictional, but it's 100% powered by fact. At no point is Malcolm X going to come in the room and be like, I got some strippers. Like, if it's not something that the person wouldn't have done in real life, I would not want to characterize them in a way doing it in the film. I wanted it to be believable so that even if people knew them, they would believe that they would say and do these things. But other than that, I didn't see it as much as a burden as an opportunity. I really did, because I felt like people's knowledge of, even their knowledge of Malcolm X and Muhammad Ali, I felt is generally speaking kind of limited. It's limited to pull quotes and speeches when it comes to Malcolm. I wish people had a more holistic view of Malcolm and his life. I have another play that I wrote that I haven't even produced yet called The Two Reds, that focuses just on when Malcolm was a dishwasher with Red Fox, which he was. He was Detroit Red. Red Fox was Chicago Red. Malcolm had a hell of a life, and it's because that's what makes Malcolm inspiring to me, because Malcolm was the living embodiment that we are all salvageable. We live in a society where the prison industrial complex picked up where slavery left off. And you're often told as a Black man that you are beyond redemption. And you're often told that from a very, very young age. That's what, at least to my generation that grew up in the 70s and 80s, makes Malcolm such a powerful figure, because he was redeemed. But I think it's important to know the depths of that redemption. And again, Malcolm's someone that people profess to know. That's not even getting into the Sam Cookes of the world, who people don't know a damn thing about Sam Cooke. So I just saw this as a wonderful opportunity for young people to understand that these icons of theirs were young people just like them. And they're capable, and they did these things when they were their age. Cassius was 22, Jim was 28, Sam and Malcolm were in their 30s. There is these movements, in order for us to move ourselves forward as a community, it's up to the young people to do it. I'm older. The day I wrote this play, I was older than all those men were in that room.
That's amazing. So last questions, both of you, and I know we got to wrap it up, so we don't have a ton of time. What message do you want people to take from the film, and how can they apply what they learned from the film to their everyday lives? What do you guys think?
Regina?
Oh, wow. Well, I guess there's a few things. I think specifically for the younger generation, the understanding how you can debate lovingly, you know, I think that's very important to that they see that. I think it's quite powerful to see men still be brothers, but be very clear with their position, and also know that they can disagree and, you know, come back together after the disagreement. That's really important to me. And I think as far as the universal thing, that to Kemp's point, how young all of these men were, and all of them are not with us except for Jim. And you know, but we are here. What can we do to actually be a part of transformative change? Because again, these are conversations that have gone on 80 years, you know, and we're still here in it. We still are dealing with those systems. So I hope it inspires people to want to use their agency, to find a way within yourself that does not have to be someone else's. Because while Sam and Malcolm's they disagreed, what we as the audience can agree with is that both of both of them have the way that they were inspired to actually create equality for the movement is necessary. We need both, but we need people to be fire and brimstone, and we need people to be economically free. Both of those things are important. So to find within yourself what that is as a Black person, or as a white person, as an American, or wherever you are experiencing any marginalized life, what can you do now that you're alive and healthy to evoke change?
Thank you. And Kemp?
I mean, just piggybacking off of what Regina said, I mean, there's a central conflict in this film, but I never believe that the audience shouldn't come away feeling one person is right, because the answer is they're both right. It's situational. Sometimes the best way to handle things is to work within the system, like Sam suggests. Other times, the best way to handle it is to be like Malcolm and burn the shit down. And the answer is really situational. It's important for people to understand that that dialogue they're having is not just a debate that we've been having as a community. It's also a debate that goes on internally in our psyches every day, just being Black Americans, when we are making a decision about how we're going to handle this situation where we are being marginalized, where we are being treated in a certain way. So it's just, there's no, both of them are right.
Well, I just want to say this. I want to thank both of you for your artistry and your intelligence and just what you've created. And I know you guys can't say this, but I'm going to say it. I'm going to claim it. I see Best Directing Oscar for Regina. I see Best Film Oscar. I see Best Adapted Screenplay Oscar. I see Best Acting Oscars. I see this film dominating award season. I know that's not why it was made, but I just like claiming it anyway because it's deserving of that.
Oh, thank you.
We'll take it.
and good. And so thank you for what you guys have created, and God bless, and thanks everybody for checking us out. I'll throw it back to Isaac.